everyone, and welcome to our next podcast. Today, I have with me Rajeev Sharma, the CTO of Grid Dynamics, who's currently based in New York. Rajiv is a former senior rocket scientist and colonel in the Indian Army. And over the last 16 years, he has been working on enterprise scale digital platform engineering, system architecture, enterprise architecture, AI, and more recently now, Gen AI. Before becoming the CTO at Grid Dynamics, he led a deep learning startup, Nova IQ, as its CEO and CTO from 2018 to 2020, which were the very initial years of deep learning. So I'm extremely excited to have you here, Rajiv, on the podcast today. And before we start off, I'd really love to invite you to share a bit about your role at Grid Dynamics.
Yeah, thank you very much, Adit, for this nice introduction. I'm very happy to be here on this platform with you. And I hope something meaningful and constructive will flow out of this. My role at Grid Dynamics, as you rightly said, I'm the CTO at Grid Dynamics. I've been at Grid for the last 3 years now. And more importantly, the role is all about, as a services company, Grid Dynamics works with Fortune 1000 companies in enabling their digital platform engineering, AI, and now Gen AI journeys powered by data and cloud and user experience. So my essential role at Grid Dynamics is, one is to map our capabilities and innovations to what the customers are facing in terms of their business challenges. That is the first one. So for that, we have more than, for example, last 1 year, we built more than 35 to 40 proof of concepts with AI and Gen AI powered on cloud to help our customers understand and navigate this very confusing journey, especially with Gen AI. We've also, my role is also about helping foster collaboration within the company between architects, business representatives, marketing teams, so that we are able to put our best foot forward in the industry. And last but not the least, right, I have a seat at the table as a CXO, as an advisor to the CEO on all things technology. So that, in a nutshell, is my role at Grid Dynamics as a CTO.
That's amazing. I think, I always say this to my CTO, Anand, right? He's like the ability to, build something, bring that technical perspective in front of customers, manage extremely large teams, right? And then always, be there for those conversations with me, which you do with your CEO as well, right? I don't know how he does that, but yeah, a huge respect for all CTOs out there, and especially at the scale you guys operate, right? So, I think for the listeners of this podcast, a lot of them are CIOs, VP, ITs for large enterprise organizations, Fortune 500, Fortune 100, Fortune 1000, right? I think one of the biggest things that, in my conversation I've seen coming out is that there is one large component of enterprise AI, and it's more traditional as well, right? So that's more like the last 5 years were about enterprise AI. But then suddenly year and a half, 2 years ago, large language models and Gen AI came into being. And now, you mentioned yourself, you've done so many pilots over the last 12 months, right? 50 plus pilots is, I think, what you said, right? So what is that difference? So for our audience, let's first demystify the difference between the enterprise AI and now Gen AI.
I think it's a wonderful question. And see, for anything to become enterprise scale, whether it's AI or Gen AI, and I'll come to the nuances, anything to become enterprise scale, it has to have the ability to, especially with AI and Gen AI, it has to have the ability to be trained or managed based on large corpus of data. That is number one. Number two, it should be available for consumption through API economy at the enterprise scale. So the output of a model is not on a laptop or a Jupyter notebook, or it has to be available through an API, which is for n number of users, depending on your industry and context, right? Now, AI probably is in the very early stages before it really becomes enterprise AI, right? So, for example, we've all been dabbling for times immemorial with regression models, logistic regression models, multiple linear regression models. Many have built operation research-based optimization models based on non-linear dynamic integer programming, linear simplex model if you have studied operation research. So these are all based on some numerical methods of closed form solutions. And then the advent of neural networks as a way to solve similar problems using much more larger corpus of data where the models are trained well, in a supervised manner, or they're operating in a non-supervised cluster. And so that became kind of mainstream, and we all started calling it enterprise AI. So for example, larger supply chain companies, when they do demand forecasting and their enterprise teams or functional teams are using that, it is now available that intelligence of the machine is available at the enterprise scale. So it is enterprise AI. Now, natural language-based models, people are aware of BERT-based models, transformer-based models. Then came the GPT-3, and then came many other, models. These were some of the early precursors of people working with natural language. So now all the companies or the teams that have worked on natural language, for them, understanding and getting used to Gen AI based large language models is not a big jump. It is kind of a very logical understanding of how things would scale. Like way back in 2019, we trained an AI model using BERT-based model, a GPT-3-based model, open source model, to learn military law, right? So that was a classic use case of a domain-specific large language model for a very specialized domain of military law. And this is 2019, when there were no foundation models as yet.
Wow.
And BERT and GPT-3 was one. So now when we come to Gen AI and say, how do I use Gen AI? When people talk about Gen AI, they say Chat GPT-3, or they say Gemini, and then there are open source models. People talk about Llama 3 and so on. So these are all natural language based models, and now there are vision models like Stable Diffusion. These are a class of different models which are in early stages of comprehension. And very soon, I think within next 1 year, from being a proof of concept, I think most of them will become enterprise scale, at least some of them. But when I say enterprise scale or enterprise AI, I don't think every company will get there. The companies which are digitally savvy, which are AI savvy, which have a good handle on the trifecta of data, cloud, and AI, I think they are the lead benefactors of this push. But that essentially is where enterprise and Gen AI is, and very soon Gen AI will become enterprise AI.
Got it. So, okay, so just to kind of condense what you said, I think amazing insight. But you're saying enterprise AI, means enterprise scale AI essentially, and like right now or over the last 5 years, the definition has been focused on BERT-based models or other models of NLP, not large language models, but they're actually now operating at the scale of across the enterprise. Lots of use cases, lots of daily requests, etc. So and that's why it is enterprise, and soon we will see that kind of adoption for large language models as well, where basically the definition of enterprise AI will by default become LLMs. Over the next 12, 24 as adoption increases. Is that the correct understanding?
I think it is a bit nuanced in that, but I think you put it pretty well, in the sense that, see, LLMs or the foundation models have converted the whole experience to a single chat window.
Yeah.
Right. So the entire focus is back on ease of interaction with the backend platforms, be it databases or analytics engine or whatever. That is one. Number two, I think the enterprise architecture is back in focus, because you need to understand what problem of your enterprise will AI or Gen AI solve, and how does it infuse in the business operating model?
Yeah.
How will it bring money into the bank of a company for revenue gen? Or so I think whether it is AI or Gen AI, the foundational business principles remain the same, but the focus is back on enterprise architecture. That means mapping technology foundation to business requirements, and then infusing this machine capability machine intelligence into every process and business models of the company.
Got it. Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for that, Rajiv. And then let me now move on to my next question. Can you give me, so you mentioned early on while giving your introduction that you've done, 40, 50 odd pilots and POCs with your Fortune 1000 customers in the field of Gen AI. Can you, for this audience, a lot of them will be working for large banks, insurance companies, FMCGs, right? And like really large organizations, global organizations. So for their benefit, can you give a few examples of use cases that you've done, you have piloted or POC, or maybe in production as well now, that have actually driven ROI for the customer, right? A few example of those, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, without getting into the specific customers and proprietary information, I think it is fair to extract what kind of problems we solve for what kind of customers and what industry, right? So, like, for example, very recently, and these are all where customers are, actually deriving business value. So, for example, for a wealth management organization, we built a conversational AI as a advisor, as an assistant to the financial advisors. So the way the financial advisors would give guidance to their high net worth individuals or their book of business, now they have to go through a large corpus of data and then internalize it and then create reports and so on and so forth. So now using a conversational AI, the FAs can use this as an assistant and then get summaries of the documents, get trends, high level bullet points on the trends, and then use that as sound bites or advisory for their high net worth individual regarding their portfolio optimization and so on.
Amazing.
So this is already now 6 months into operation. The other piece is many of our customers, especially one of our customers in the manufacturing space, had a lot of their code in a legacy technology, and they wanted to convert the code to Java, and then do some stuff on it. So, and then there was another customer, and again in automotive actually, where they had code in a particular front end technology like React, and they wanted to convert to Next.js, right? To drive a servant-driven UI kind of initiatives. And then there was another customer that was looking at converting the old COBOL into Java, right? So legacy code modernization came to us from a financial services customer, a pure manufacturing customer, and an automotive customer, OEM, right? And we actually helped them demonstrate the efficacy of such a possibility. Wow. We actually showed it to them that typical output of a single short code conversion is akin to a very low, junior, low quality developer code, right? So now to operate on this in a better way, you need a much senior developer who understands the output of a poor developer.
Yeah.
But in reality, I think the key thing we learned is that legacy code modernization, you need multiple agents. Like you need an agent to operate the folder structure of your documents or your code. You need another agent to operate the operating system, or like Linux and Unix commands. You need another code for cleaning the code or opening the Eclipse or any IDE. So the way a developer develops code using multiple subtasks, if you do that, code conversion and quality of code will improve. So we are still in very early stages of legacy code modernization, but we have been able to share with our customers very insightful outcomes of the POCs and proof of value, so that we are able to now take decision to scale it up, right? One more probably just for the third one is, for one of the apparel industries, we kind of created a POC on virtual try-on, where you can actually try their products virtually and see how you look, and improve the shopping experience on the portal and the customer experience, and also influence the buying decision. If I can take that shirt, that catalog product, and see how I look by uploading my picture or something, and that is an amazing experience. So these are all pretty good, I think, our POCs and proof of value efficacy demonstrators that we have seen bringing real value to our customers.
Well, that's very interesting, Raji. Like thinking about the second one, which was the legacy code to legacy code modernization. I think that just brings to mind like so many organizations, so many companies in the world who are still running, code from 1990s and 2000s in C, C++, COBOL,
Yeah.
etc. So I think that's very interesting. So you said that if you like right now the output is probably a junior developer, but if you figure out ways of providing like divide multiple subtasks and basically think of them as separate agents, you'll probably be able to improve code quality. And of course, as all of these LLMs become better on a day-to-day, monthly, yearly basis, in a year from now, you'll probably have an output of a senior developer, for these customers. So, really, really exciting stuff. Even with us, Rajiv, like we are seeing, like, of course, we are not in the space like you are, specifically like code monetization or modernization or some of the other examples you gave. But even in the work we've done with customers, and we've been kind of doing it for a very long time. So simple use cases, like reducing help desk tickets, right? So like IT, HR, finance help desk tickets, right? So before Gen AI, we were able to give a guarantee. So we give a guarantee in contract. Before Gen AI, our guarantee in the contract was around 50%. Now that has shot up to 70, 75 and will go to 80% as well. So we can guarantee that to you in contract that we're going to reduce the number of tickets coming to your IT, HR, finance help desk by 70, 80%. So that's the kind of leap we are seeing already. So I'm sure these are some use cases our listeners can take value from and try to experiment with within their organizations as well.
I can only add one thing there, that for example, in many early years of AI, we were using classifying the tickets that are coming. Are they related to the database or related to any of what part of the platform, right? And then so we would have driving those tickets in different, and then integrating it with the people who are actually going to solve data tickets or solve infra tickets and DevOps tickets, right? And then directly routing those tickets to those people so that you don't waste time in triaging if this ticket belongs to which part of the problem, right? Now a lot of things can be done using Gen AI, but under the hood you could still use a conventional segmentation classifier, like a logistic regression or a CNN model, and then a large language model can drive the segmentation and then LLM analytics. Yeah. So
basically what I'm hearing you say is that, hey, everything still, like today, everything does not need an LLM, so don't push an
yeah,
LLM into.
exactly,
I hear
exactly,
you. I hear what you're saying. I think, bang
exactly.
on. I think intelligent swarming, escalation,
Yeah,
categorization, all of that, they probably don't need Gen AI.
yeah,
And we see that a lot. A lot of our customers have experimented before they come to us with things like
right.
these. Of course, you don't need a large language model,
That's right.
to try and do that. Makes sense. So after this, I'll come to a very interesting topic, Rajiv, which will be very, is very close to heart for me, but I'd love to take your perspective. So, I always think that if you look at any technology, right, technology, and you kind of mentioned this early on, right, in the introduction part itself, that we try to map the technology with the business process and business value, right, and drive business value from
Right.
the technology, right? So we believe, and I personally believe that technology is only 20% of the puzzle, right? I think 80% of it is change management and adoption in an enterprise, right? Because you can have
Right.
the Ferraris of the world and the Mercedes of the world, but if you don't use them, if you don't take them out of the garage, right, like they're all equal, right? So, like, how do you like? What are your thoughts on adoption of Gen AI in customers that you've been working with, and what are some of the challenges you've faced, and how did you solve them?
I think that's a great question, and there are multiple questions embedded in that question. But in the as you said, I come from the military background, and we always in the army say that it is the person behind the machine that's very important. You know, like recently there was a movie, Top Gun Maverick, where he says, "Is the man, not the machine, right? It's a pilot." So I think it's still the same, right? And the infusion of Gen AI or AI, again, a lot is dependent on how humanity can start trusting the outcome of Gen AI, right? Like for example, many of the human decisions, with all the data we had, we saw the crisis of 2008, right?
Yeah.
And but we would still go, we would still rely on a human being making some critical decisions and not a machine, right? So we kind of, as a race, we place a higher bar on machines to be trustworthy than humans to be trustworthy, which
Yeah.
I find very interesting. For me to trust a human is very easy, but for me to trust a machine, I set a very high bar,
Yeah.
right? And mind you, the machine is being trained on the same data generated in the business, which emanated from human-led decisions,
Yep.
right? So this is an important paradigm that I always view, and I will probably write a book on it at some point in time. Now, the other piece is, so improving the believability and trustworthiness of the model will drive adoption even in regulated industries. So I certainly see that in the coming years, even if the industries are regulated, people will again rely more and more on output of a machine, or a human computer interaction led output. I would say that, right? That is one. It will only increase. Number two, uh, I think we will have many more models working as an orchestra seamlessly, with the hidden complexity behind a very simple interface of interaction. So when you type something, or when you ask something, or you speak something, the voice operated things, you will still, behind the scenes, somewhere a statistical regression model may work, somewhere an LLM may work, somewhere a CNN or an RNN or an LSTM may work. And all of this will work in a hidden complexity format. And what humans will get is a very consumable information, either as a voice response, or a chat response, or a pleasing dashboard. So this is only going to increase more and more, I see. The third part is, I think, as humanity, we will also learn how to infuse this in our enterprise architecture. You'll soon see that at some point, enterprise architecture became like a ivory tower work, with a lot of boxes and block diagrams. I think with now AI infused businesses, like for example, every business will be a machine augmented business, right? Whether you use, again, traditional enterprise AIs like machine learning, deep learning, or even Gen AI based platforms based on foundation models and open source models, every platform will become an intelligent platform of sorts. I cannot imagine building today a mobile app which is not intelligent. Why would I build a web app which is not intelligent, which is not leveraging the data that it collects? So I see more and more infusion at the workplace of business operating models augmented with human machine interactions, or machine led autonomous interactions. And last but not the least, I think we will also land up creating new roles and skills. Like, who thought of a prompt engineer, right? We never thought of an Ola driver or Uber driver. Now there is prompt engineer, right? Now you may soon have people only specializing in RAG processes. You never know, right? So I think we will see new roles and skills coming, and we will see new operating models. Like, we had the platform as a service, software as a service, infra as a service. Then somebody said data as a service. I think new operating models will emerge in the workplace, and we will get more and more comfortable with such evolution in the coming years. It's a good question. It made me think. Yeah.
I really love the part where you said, a lot of adoption is going to get driven by just infusing all of this, whatever AI it might be, right? LLMs, and RNNs, CNNs, LSTMs, but infusing them in existing interfaces and existing interactions is where you can actually drive more adoption. So instead of trying to change behaviors, and I think that's what Google is doing, right? So if you Google search today, they're actually not generating the response itself, right? And in the experiment, they're just generating the response at the top, right? I think that makes a lot of sense. It kind of drives us to the next question. I think you kind of mentioned it a bit, like about us trusting AI. When you were talking about adoption, you talk about us trusting humans, trusting AI and machines and their responses, right? So how can enterprises today ensure that their use of generative AI is ethical and responsible. I think, why this is important, specifically generative AI, is because, as you mentioned, the RNNs, the CNNs, they have also probably gone through that phase. And, we created those, filters and guardrails and said, okay, you know what, this is now safe for human use or for enterprise use, right? So, how do you see that evolving? And what are customers doing, or what are you advising your customers to do to ensure that their use of generative AI is ethical and responsible?
See, I think it's again a great question. And many years ago, when we were pondering building our startup, and so, for example, there was a company that was asking, we are in a very dangerous kind of work, and should we employ women, right? Now, you would say that we should be an equal opportunity employer, I think, which is pretty ethical and fine. But then there are some professions, because of the responsibilities women carry in a society, they have to bear children. They have to, in many households, based on the cultures, women have different roles in the society, and which are much more difficult and tougher compared to what men typically have wielded, right? And today, women also go to work, they handle household, they manage children, they manage culture, they do so many things. Now, if you're saying that this is a high risk domain, now women are fighter pilots, don't get me wrong. They're fighter pilots, but now will you say that for this very dangerous job, I'm going to have equal representation by men and women? The answer is yes. If a woman wants to apply for that, she should be able to apply. Now, if you train the model on the traditional data, you will never get a fair response, because it will be biased towards the most dominant outcomes always, which is hiring a able-bodied man, right?
Yeah.
So now, how do you apply ethics? So you will have to, if you use that data to train the model, you'll not get the right outcome, a fair outcome, in which is, say, equal opportunities for women. So you will have to then artificially, through software libraries and rules engine, create an outcome where the data is kind of softened, or a synthetic data is infused to make sure that it represents balance. Otherwise, you'll never get it. Or you will have to accept the output of the model given the specific realities and context of your industry, right? So I think it's an orchestra, again, as I said, ethical infusion of ethics and inclusion and diversity. This is a multifunctional role. The legal department, the ethics department, the human resource department, the engineering department, the business leaders, they all have to formulate an operating guideline for their institution, depending on the realities of their business, right? And then infuse them. That means now what you can do, you have to make sure that the documentation, if it's a Gen AI based platform you're going to employ for making some decisions, then the documentation sources should be vetted for, so that the model does not hallucinate between wrong options, where it has been trained on a vast corpus of all kinds of data. So you want it to be RAG fine-tuned using RAG, but your specific corpus. So it gives you right answers for you, which is valid for you. One. The second piece is putting guardrails, right? That or refusal mechanisms, that any such ask should be refused, unethical, right? Like, I want to hire only a particular race of people. It should say no, not possible, right? So refusal mechanisms have to be kind of built into that, right? And then you also need to make sure that you score your models and data and make it available across the company, right? How does your model and data benchmark against certain standards of ethics and diversity and inclusion, depending on the realities of the context of your business? Remember, it's all about the business you are in, right? And then, try to see how you can upskill and reskill your people so that they understand what AI is and Gen AI is and what it is not, right? Only then you can create a right, formulate a policy as a wrapper on top of the output of an AI, right? And sometimes these policies have to be enforced through different software interventions, like training data, supervised data, labeling your data, and then masking some data, and then creating synthetic data to balance the unevenness, skewness in the data, so that the models learn the right behavior, and then making sure that the the decisions the model is being asked to make are very similar to the decisions on which the model has seen. Otherwise, your training set will never match the actual real validation set, and you will have a problem. So these are some of the, again, it's an orchestra. There is no silver bullet, and you have to really work as a cross-functional team to bring this about in a very effective manner.
Got it. No, I think very nuanced answer. I think you mentioned a lot of the very interesting and important point, I think, for everybody listening into on this. Uh, just thinking about it, I think the example you gave is very close to another example. I have a friend again in New York itself. He leads a large bank, and one of their function is giving out loans, right? Interestingly, if you take last 30, and they have 30, 40, like, they're a 100-year-old bank,
Yeah,
right? If you take the last 30, 40 years of data, it is heavily biased towards giving loans to, specific stratas of society
yeah, yeah,
versus just right out,
yeah,
outrightly just rejecting, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
what they did, very just like you said, rectifying data. So they went back, they took out everything that was related to strata, names. They literally like stripped off everything,
yeah,
anything that could, you know, allow the LLM to learn from a race perspective. Like, you know,
yeah.
interestingly, still it got biased, and Rajesh is gonna blow your mind. It got biased by pin codes.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Because if you look at it was just directly correlated with the risk, right? So if you look at
Yes,
the society, the US society, right, and like people where they base, and people where like high sections of strata, lower sections, specific races, they all live in specific places
yeah,
in a particular city, right? So it started
yeah,
bias using like the bias got introduced via the pin codes, and it started using the
interesting. Yeah,
pin codes to accept. So it's crazy. Like I think this is something extremely, extremely important. And I think I love what you said, that initially, sitting down with the, HR, legal, and many different, of course, business, and then many other departments of the organization, creating that those list of things that really, really matter to you as an organization. And then going back to the engineering team and the technology team, and saying that, okay, you know what, like these are, like, this is the line in the sand, we don't want to cross it. And then like, even if the LLM output or the any generative AI or any AI output crosses that line, then just cutting it out there, and also like making synthetic data or labeling, changing the labeling of the data, etc. I think that's something very, very interesting. I believe that there's going to be a lot of more work and a lot of more products, and I'm sure engineering and courses, etc., is going to come around this particular portion of the entire Gen AI ecosystem. I think this is very underinvested, but it actually has far outreaching ripple effects into our society. And very, very interesting thing. Hopefully, we'll get to talk more about it later on. But let me move on to the next question, which is kind of to wrap all of this up. What do you think is uh, are the future implications of Gen AI, generative AI, in the workplace?
yeah. I think one is generative AI or technologies like these will not only work on the business but also work in the business, right? So I feel that when I show up at work as a financial advisor or as a healthcare professional or as a doctor, medical doctor, or as an engineer, I will be using these tools uh, to make me more effective. So augment my capabilities and capacities, and free up my time so that I can use my actual expertise on something that I'm really good at. That is one. So these are productivity pieces of humans in every profession, for which you may have very fine-tuned, specified Gen AI models for that profession, for legal profession, for doctors, for engineers, for oil rig drillers, and so on and so forth. So you'll see a proliferation of very specifically trained models. I would say small models, right? The smaller models, right? Rather than that, right? And then there are different ways to do that. Number one. Number two, I would see the infusion of these technologies working on the business, driving customer experience, driving customer loyalty, driving customers' buying behavior, right? Uh, and then also uh, having a direct impact at the primary, secondary, and tertiary levels on the revenue generation of any business. And then in the same vein, having a direct primary, secondary, and tertiary impact on the cost optimization on the business. And then, as I said earlier, primary, secondary, and tertiary impact on the productivity of me as a person working on the business and on the customer experience. So I think going forward, we will, and the best part of it is that all of us will be dealing with this in such a well-designed user experience, right? Where design thinking is at the core, like for whom the bell tolls, right? So the customer will be in the center. Now the customer could be inside the business or outside the business, right? And then the focus will be back on core software engineering, like for example, building an API, right? Or building a caching mechanism, standing up a vector database in the cloud, right? Or building some FinOps so that my cloud cost is alerts are triggered. So you see, the focus is going to go back to core enterprise architecture, solution architecture, mixing of open source and proprietary, and then UX design. Only then you will be able to really see the big change, right? So that's what I normally see. And honestly, till the time we solve the problem of compute and storage cost, right? And the only way to solve that is using a mix of blend of open source and proprietary and use them for fit for purpose. That is the holy grail, and which is why you need very good engineers and leaders, business leaders. It's a tough problem.
No, absolutely. I think you've touched something which is very, very close to heart. Like I think, but what I loved is your focus on, either generate revenue or reduce costs. Right. At the end of the day, that is the two things that matter to everyone in business. And that's basically what you have to do. So Gen AI will get influenced. Everyone will have their own agents, probably not large language model, but small language models, SLMs, for every role. So every role will have a personalized assistant or agent, which is a small language model. I love the idea, and I can see that kind of future playing out. Hopefully, we at Leena get to build a bit of that as well. But it was amazing hosting you today, Rajeev. And I'd love to continue our conversation offline. But thank you so much for taking out 40 minutes of your time today and doing this with us. So thank you so much. And
yeah. Thank you for having me. Actually, I enjoyed the conversation, the questions. For many of your questions, there are no straight, easy answers, right? So, because we are in such an evolutionary stage, I normally joke and say that we are still with AI and Gen AI, probably we are still in the 1995 to 2001 era, right?
Yep.
We still have to figure out, these are general purpose technologies. General purpose technologies take decades to really sediment and take root, and take firm grip. So I think we're in very early stages, and I'm sure we will figure out as a race how we use AI ethically to augment our capacities for the overall human good. Yeah.
I'm very, very exciting times. I'm like the biggest thing for me is it's very fortunate for us to be alive in this era of crazy acceleration and innovation. So thank you so much for coming and really excited for the future. Thank you.
My best wishes to you and Leena AI as well. Yeah. Thank you for having me.